Welcome to the Women's Motorsports Network podcast, the show that puts the spotlight on the incredible women who fuel the world of motorsports. From drivers to crew members, engineers to fans, and everyone in between, we're here to celebrate the trailblazers, dreamers, and doers shaping the sport we love. Each episode, we share inspiring stories of females of all ages, from every corner of the motorsports universe, past, present, and future. It's a journey through the seasons of life filled with heartfelt moments, laughter, and a whole lot of horsepower. So whether you're a lifelong fan, a racer yourself, or simply curious about the extraordinary women behind the wheel, settle in, relax, and enjoy a fun and uplifting ride with us. This is the Women's Motorsports Network podcast, connecting and celebrating women in motorsports, one story at a time. Let's hit the track. Hello, everyone. This is Melinda Russell with the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. And my guest today is Sarah Donohue. And I'm so happy you could connect with me, Sarah, and we could record this podcast with you as my guest. And so I want to say welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Why don't we start by you sharing a little bit about yourself with my listeners?
Well, I live in Alicante in Spain, but I'm actually from the very cold UK. So me and my husband moved out here about 8 years ago just to kind of get away from the cold weather. And of course, be near the sea and the beaches because I do a lot of marine conservation and I like diving. So that's one of the reasons we moved out here. But I started powerboat racing, so motorsports on water, not on land. So I started powerboat racing back in the 90s, in 1993.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a bit, and I'm still in the sport now. I've kind of been here forever. And if I didn't have motorsport in my life, I have no idea what I would do because it is my entire life. I eat it, sleep it, live it. Everything I do is around motorsport.
Yeah, I get that because that's just, it gets in our blood and you just can't get it out. And you've done this for quite a long time and yet you still have a passion for it or you wouldn't be doing it. And so,
yeah, I absolutely love it. And I think that people that are in motorsport quite a lot that have the longevity that stay there for a long time, like me. I'm a bit of an old fossil now. But we then end up after racing, we continue and we volunteer.
yeah.
And then you volunteer. Sorry, my cat.
That's okay.
See,
he wants to be in the show.
Yeah, he wants to get involved, don't you, Rassie? And I think you become a volunteer, and then from volunteering, you could end up being an official. And you just remain in the sport.
Right.
I love it.
And you give back. Like you say, when you volunteer. People did that as you were coming up. And so now, you're doing your part to give back. And that's how we keep everything going and keep people interested. And, like you said, you couldn't just not do something, right?
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that the majority of people involved in motorsports that you see, a lot of us are volunteers. We're not on wages. We're not on megabucks. And without volunteers, a lot of most motorsport, wouldn't exist because they need us for everything. It doesn't matter if you're a track marshal or you're a marshal on water. The majority of us don't get paid. So if you love motorsport, volunteer and get involved because we need volunteers.
Yeah, absolutely. Good reminder about that for sure. So tell me about racing a boat. How did you get into that? When did you start? What kind of boats do you race? All the details.
Well, funny enough, I got into it by pure accident. I was training to go on the stunt register to be a stunt woman. So it wasn't something that I was opposed to when I was asked if I wanted to do it. And it was pure fluke. I was just at let's say a nightclub in London. and a gentleman called Charles Burnett III, who's no longer with us, I'm afraid, but Charles Burnett III, he used to race powerboats, but he also did a lot of speed records. So he's even done records down at the Salt Flats. Okay. So I was with Charles for racing with him for quite a long time. He just came up to me and he said, we have no females in the sport. He said, if you raced and you're good, you'd give me great publicity for the restaurant and it'd be good for you. I mean, literally, I was doing some work at the restaurant. Okay. Yeah, I was doing some PR work at the restaurant. He really liked my personality and just said, you'd be great with me. And he said to the manager of the restaurant, he said, listen, I'm taking Sarah for the race team. Find yourself another PR girl. And do you know what? That was back in 1993. And I haven't looked back first. And the first boat I had was a really tight, you don't get them in the States. Well, you obviously get small boats, but this is a really small race boat. Okay. But in Europe, we start very small. And this was a 16-foot Phantom, right? Okay. And it's not the Phantom that the boat builder Will Smith in America builds. It's not that sort of Phantom. It's a very small boat. Obviously, it's an open canopy boat. 2 people sit inside, and it had a 90 horsepower engine on the back. And it probably did around, I don't know, maybe let's say 55 miles an hour. And for people that don't race boats, they need to understand that you might get in a car and do 50 miles an hour and it's not quick, but you have to double or triple that once you get on water, because on land, 50 miles an hour doesn't feel fast, but 50 miles an hour in a boat is rapid. Yes. Especially we race on the most unpredictable racing surface in the world. Oh, yeah. So we are changing the setup of the boat all the time, the trim, the lifter, the ballast. And some boats have the fuel, you can pump the fuel around. So every single boat is different. You have monohulls, catamarans, you have enclosed, open. So I started in a little 16-foot Phantom, and then, so I've got my eyes on the cat here. He's about to jump in. And then I went up to, I think, an 18-foot Phantom. Then I went up to a 21-foot Frode with a 2-litre on the back. And now we're getting up to 80 miles an hour. And because the boats are very, very light, I think the 2-litre boats, they're not called 2-litre anymore, but the 2-litre boats at that stage, that's when you were getting into real racing, because it was open canopy, you were going very fast. And remember, 80 miles an hour is about the equivalent of 160 on land. You're on an unpredictable racing surface, and anything can happen, and it does happen. So yeah, it's been interesting. Then I moved from a 21-foot to a 27-foot catamaran. So those were monohulls. Then I moved to a catamaran. And then I went back to a monohull that was canopied. And the last boat I actually raced, funnily enough, was a tiny one. It was 14 foot. I had a bit of fun out in Hong Kong. But before that, I raced a Pantera, which is an American-built boat. And she was 45 foot long. Wow. So
you had 14 foot to 45 foot.
Yeah, and this is just it. It's you build you build a life for yourself in racing. And some people only race big boats, some people only race small boats, some people only race monohulls, some only catamarans. And I've had that wonderful life in my sport where I have tried the smallest of boats to the biggest of boats, and they all have different characteristics, of course. And I think a lot of people like racing big boats because the ride is a lot smoother. People wouldn't always agree with that, and if the water's very rough, of course the ride isn't smooth. But they have the bigger reach of the waves, don't they? If you've got big waters, they've got a better reach. And if you have a small boat, they can be incredibly painful and uncomfortable and very difficult as well to manage. But my favourite boats are the small boats. I love a 16-foot Phantom with a 90 horsepower on the back because you really feel alive when you race. You feel everything. absolutely everything the water is giving you, you feel it through your bones.
Wow. I was going to ask you what was your favorite, and you already told me that. And so, are you still racing?
No, the last race I did was pre-COVID. And
Okay.
do you know what? I think really it's only because as you get older, I think powerboat racing is incredibly dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of the most dangerous motorsports in the world, if not the most dangerous motorsport, because you have drowning to contend with as well.
Yes.
So there's lots of things, and I've been on a life support machine. I had an accident back in 1999. I was knocked unconscious, I fractured my skull, broke loads of bones, had titanium plates in my face. And I essentially knocked unconscious, drowned. I was stuck in the footwell of the cockpit under the water for they've said 4 minutes because they have to medically 4 minutes. But the reality was I was inside the cockpit under the water for 10 minutes. And I was resuscitated on the deck of the boat, airlifted to a hospital, resuscitated again on a life support machine. They didn't induce a coma. I was in one. But that was in 1999. But I got back in and won the European Championships the next year against a fleet of men, because it's all male, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think sometimes you think I've been lucky. I'm still here.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing it since 93. And then I was already doing quite a lot of volunteer work within the sport with different organizations. So I just decided to then step aside, let the other people come through the ranks, help get people into it, give advice if they need to, and then just work as a volunteer and an official.
Okay.
And I'm really pleased to say that after all these years of dedicating myself to the sport, at the start of last year, 2024, I was made a UIM Commissioner.
Wow.
And the UIM Commissioner is our governing body for motorsports on water, recognised all over the world. And they made me a UIM Sports Commissioner. So if there is a world or a European Championship on, that's where the UIM would send one of their commissioners to. And then we kind of work with the OOD and we work with the racers, we work with everyone, but we make sure that people stick to the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And all the rules are followed by both, of course, racers and the officials. So we govern everything. But also we make sure that everyone's safe. And we even do things like check that there's enough fire extinguishers there. That the OOD and their officials have made sure there's a proper, let's say, a refueling station. And make sure the pits are big enough, make sure that people can get in and out of the water with their boats safely. Everything, even down to making sure in this new era now of being environmentally friendly, we make sure that when the boats are on land and the teams are working on the engines, that there are environmental mats on the floor, so that if there's any leakages from oil, then it goes into the mat. So as a UIM Sports Commissioner, we just oversee everything and make sure that everyone's happy. So I'm proud to be a UIM Sports Commissioner. It's I'm just over the moon.
You should be proud, because that's a huge deal. So as a commissioner, do they assign you certain races that you go to, that you make sure all these things happen, or how does that work? Who takes care of it on race day?
Yes, so we are a commissioner is assigned. You have your technical commissioner that obviously deals with all the technical side of it, and then you have the sports commissioner, which would be me. So I would get an email from the UIM, their head office, and their head office is over in Monaco. But I would get an email and I would be asked, "Are you available for this date?" And I would either say yes or no. So I was sent to the beautiful Lake Como for the 3D European Championships, which was wonderful because the 3D boats are beautiful catamarans, all just under 30 foot in length. And, they're just beautiful boats. So yeah, I went over to Lake Como and did that. And afterwards, you write a report on everything that you've seen. There's lots of questions that you answer. And if you think anything's missing, or they could improve on something, you put that in there. But it was run by an OOD called Marcello Zanardi, and Marcello was the very first OOD I ever met in international racing in 1994. So that is how long I've known him. So when I was going over to Italy, I knew that I'd be working with Marcello. So for me, it was fantastic because he is also a UIM sports commissioner.
Okay.
But in Italy, he's the OOD because you wouldn't be a sports commissioner in your own country.
Right.
So
right.
he's the officer of the day. So he knows my job because he's been doing my job for decades.
Okay.
So it was beautiful to work with him, and everyone was just. It was a great event. The Italians always put on great events.
Wow. So where else have you gone to travel to? It sounds like pretty exciting life. I know travel's not the best thing in the world anymore, but where else have you gone to?
As a sports commissioner, that was my first commission, so I'm hoping to get some more this year.
Okay.
And then as far as traveling and racing, everywhere. I mean, I raced in America, I think 2004, 2005 and 6. But I've raced in Hong Kong as well. And I mean, Italy, South Africa,
wow,
Malta, Spain. I know there's been Sicily.
Wow.
Everywhere. It's hard remembering. But I think people always say you travel a lot, it must be really nice. But the reality is living out of a suitcase.
No.
You know what it's like. It's just a whole load of traveling and washing and ironing and cleaning and, you know, not being able to do the things you love or spend time with your pets.
Sure. Your kitty missed you while you were gone.
I know. He's just sat here patiently now by my side, waiting for me to finish.
Yeah. So how do you get your boat to all those places?
Well, everyone, obviously I don't race now, but when I did, usually you if it's a big boat, you have a team. And then the team will transport them there, and they'll always go by boats, by ship. Usually in the big shipping containers, the big 45-foot containers. But if I was going from England to Italy, for example, and obviously the boat's 45-foot long, you wouldn't then do that. You would actually have a driver who would tow it on a trailer, and then you would then travel with the boat. But if you were sending a boat to America or Hong Kong or somewhere else, you would
go on a ship.
You'd send it by ship. But in Europe, it's nice and easy because you can just tow your boat to different places, because Europe really is nice and small.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that's something I had not thought of, that if you were racing in other countries, getting your boat there. But obviously it goes by ship. What makes better sense, right?
Well, yeah, and it's quite often when I used to race 2 litre, and there was quite a lot of us that would go from England to Italy to race the European Championships. We'd all travel down together in convoy, and we'd stop on the way down, and have a night in France, a couple of nights, in Italy before we get to the venue. And it's really nice. So your race turns into like an extended holiday. It's it's a nice big week away.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, as we know, the people that we race against are our friends, most of them probably, at least. And so you're friends, you're having a good time together, and then until you start to race, and then you're competitors, and then you're friends again. And so it's like you said, it's like a holiday for you, a vacation, and yet you're doing what you love. So that's pretty cool too. I love that. So
yeah, absolutely. You're just with friends all the time.
Yeah. Do you have a most memorable moment from your racing career?
Well, the crash was pretty memorable, although I can't say it was pretty memorable, actually, Melinda, because I was knocked unconscious, so I don't actually remember.
Do you know what happened? What happened that caused the crash?
Yeah, do you know, it was something really daft. The engineer, I would never blame it on the engineer because we all make mistakes and we all do things. He'd missed a bolt out of the engine. I mean, really, it could have held on, but it didn't hold on. Just something silly. Anyone could have done it. I chose to get in the boat. We all choose to do our motorsports. It was something silly. So the engine, outboard engine, just got offset a little bit, twisted it, and then the sponson dug in, and then the barrel roll happened, and that was it. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
But you learn so much through accidents and injuries, and every day is a school day.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, no one would ever do anything like that on purpose. And I'm sure, everyone felt terrible about it. And yet, isn't that just how racing goes? I mean, it is.
He was mortified. He
Yeah.
was absolutely mortified, but he didn't. And I said to him the first time I saw him afterwards, which was about a year later, I gave him a big hug and I said, it's okay. I'm here. It's absolutely fine. Don't worry. But, he really welled up and there were tears in his eyes. He was mortified. And I was like, look, it's good. It's good. And then we just went to the bar and had a drink, as you do with your friends.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how you have to look at it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your biggest challenge in learning how to race any kind of the boats? You've raced so many different kinds, but what was your biggest challenge?
I think it's just the fact of understanding that you can train as much as you want when you're on water. You know, like when you're on a track, those tracks inside and out. You know where the corners are. You know how you're going to take it. You know your line. You know everything, don't you? That's that track.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that in racing.
Yeah.
We don't have that. And even when you're racing, your turn marks could move. The anchor might come up. It happens.
True.
Someone might hit the turn mark and it might pop and disappear. And then you're stuck. So you have to then go to the imaginary turn mark until they put something down. So I think it's the fact that every single race is so different. And no matter how much you train and no matter how much you get in a boat and no matter how much you test that propeller or this setup or we'll try that, every time you get on the water's different. Mm-hmm. So I know you think, right, well, I know that propeller's really good in that water. So it's rough water. So, you put on a propeller for rough water. Then all of a sudden you put the boat in the water and you go out and the water's flat. So your propeller, you've just gone and lost a few miles an hour on your propeller. So I think that is really challenging because you're on the unpredictable racing surface. Everything changes all the time. And no matter how much you practice, no matter how much you do things, you don't know what you're going to get back from the ocean.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you don't know. Every day is a school day. Every second is a school day when you're in a boat.
For sure. So has it been difficult being a female in this type of racing when it is really 99% men, isn't it?
It's at least 99% men. I don't think it's been challenging. I was brought up with 6 boys, so I was quite lucky. Yeah. So I've always had that feisty nature where I've had to fight for absolutely everything. I think it was very unusual when I came in. I wasn't the first girl to race, obviously, but there hadn't been a girl racing for a considerable length of time before me. There was a big break.
Okay.
So actually, when I came on the racing scene, everyone was actually really pleased to have a girl back in a boat because everybody wants to see a girl on the water. It's like, oh, about time. Oh, we've got another woman. Oh, thank God for that. So people are actually really pleased to see another woman on the water. So I always had a helping hand with everything. If I wanted anything done, the guys had always helped with it. And it's not patronizing having a guy help you.
No.
It's brilliant. I love being a woman. I love having guys help me with things. It's great. So no, I haven't really had any problems. And any woman that does come into powerboat racing, they also don't get any problems. They're welcomed. And in fact, when a woman gets on a podium, it's usually the biggest cheer out of everything. Yeah. Because, as you say, it's 99% male. Mm-hmm. So it's noticed when a woman gets a podium placing.
Yeah, for sure. That's interesting. So I was just thinking about that, about having the girls, are there any women that are racing right now?
There is there one? There's one. Her dad races. So at the moment, there's one, and she races a class. Rob Lockyer's daughter, I'm going to get her name wrong now, and I do all the licenses.
Oh, that's okay.
And oh, I can't. I'm going to say Sam Lockyer, and I'm going to get that so wrong. But this is the first time she's raced this first year, and it was great. She was at the Cows Torquay, and she won. And
Wow.
she won the race she was doing. Beat all the guys. She had a guy in the back of a boat with her, so she was driving. She had a guy in the back. And I think, if I remember rightly, she was also the youngest racer. I think.
Wow.
She was also the youngest racer, so she got an award for that.
That's
so
cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So, but she kept going on stage for all sorts of awards. It was brilliant. So yeah, I think we've just got the one. I was trying to think if we've got another one, but we haven't. I think there's just one at the moment.
Do you think, and so why do you think that is? Is it because it is such a dangerous sport? Because I've watched races, on TV, and boats flip, just like what happened to you. And like you said, the track is never the same, the water.
Yeah.
Why do you think there's not more women? Is it that they don't know about it? What is it?
Well, firstly, just so you know, I do offshore racing, and there's obviously other racing. So I'm only speaking from offshore with one woman. So they have OCR racing, and I know there's about 3 girls in that, but they're navigators, not drivers.
Yeah.
Nothing that wrong. Navigating is really difficult, but I'm talking about drivers here.
Yeah.
And I've got to be really honest, and I think this is I've always said this, and it's through the whole of motorsport. It doesn't matter whether you're on a bike, in a car, a truck, a boat. It doesn't matter, whatever. Men have a natural affinity to it because a lot of them always helped their dad and their granddad with the car or with the bike when they were kids. Mm-hmm. You know, the dad or the brother got them involved, and you started that as a kid. And girls don't always, and I know I'm not speaking for all women. I'm not speaking for all guys.
No, I know.
But whereas we didn't. Funny enough, I did. I started on go-karts young, but that's because I was brought up with 6 boys. So I didn't play with the dolls. I played with bikes outside.
Yeah.
But that was me. But most girls, we don't start off life doing that. We might play dress up. We put makeup on, we wear mum's clothes, we play with dolls, we do more feminine things. So by the time we think, oh, I wouldn't mind racing, well, we've already lost that huge part of learning, which is what you do when you're very, very young.
Sure.
But also as well, motorsport, it doesn't matter if you do a amateur level, international level, or you're a professional, whatever. Motorsport is expensive regardless.
Yes.
So it's a lot easier if your father does it, or your brother does it, or your uncle does it, because then you will naturally get into it, especially if you're a guy.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. And when you're at most, funnily enough, I've got a friend that's a female engineer, and she works on inboards and outboards. She's amazing, but she's very rare. But also a lot of the guys look after their own engines. Mm-hmm. Some have engineers, but some guys don't have engineers, and they look after their engines, their own engines. But they've been involved in looking after engines and helping their dad and their brothers.
Yes.
And they now can look at, well, we don't do that. I can't do that. Oh, my nails are too long for once.
Exactly.
So I just think it's a lot different for a girl, unless she comes from a family of people that are in motorsport. Yeah. So she has that natural line and that natural progression. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm very unusual in the way that I was in my 20s when I met Charles Burnett, and he said, will you race a boat? He got me a boat and put me in it. Yeah. That doesn't happen to anyone.
No. No.
That is rare. And I'd never been in a boat. The only boat I'd ever seen was a cross-channel ferry, going from England to France. I knew nothing about boats, nothing about racing. I don't come from a family of engineers. So my story is a one-off. But not everyone's that lucky.
Yeah, for sure. So, Sarah, how could we, someone's interested, not necessarily to drive, but to kind of, watch some races. Are they televised? Is it social media? How could somebody who's like, that's really cool, I'd like to watch some of that? Is there Facebook pages? Where could we go to learn more or watch some of these races?
Well, if anybody wants to get lots of details and things, they are absolutely welcome to message me, and I'll point them in the right direction for everything.
Okay.
Because what I'll do is I'll go and research loads of websites and where you can watch them.
Okay.
Now, if there's any for the people over in America that watch, the great thing is about America, you get great footage and it goes on the TV.
Yes.
We don't get that over here in Europe, really.
Okay.
And the APBA, the American Powerboat Association. Mm-hmm. So the APBA, you can Google that. That has some great stuff on Powerboat P1. Again, their website. But I can always, if someone wants to get hold of me, I'm happy to send all these over. But really, the best thing to do, especially for America, is to look at the APBA Powerboat P1, or even do a Google search of powerboat racing in America, and all the different organizations that will come up that put the powerboating events on, because there's not just one organization, there's obviously several. And they do have the Facebook pages, and they do have the Instagram, and they do have the channels, but there are a lot of different ones.
Okay. All right. But powerboat racing, we could probably find all kinds of information about it.
Oh, absolutely. There's so much out there, and there's so many videos out there of powerboat racing. And it's, Key West is the big famous one, isn't it? The Key West, and it's always on in November. That's always televised, and there you can always get all the thrills and spills, and boats are always going over. And unfortunately, most of the time, no one gets hurt. But Key West is an amazing venue for powerboat racing in America.
So interesting story. Back in 2000, I want to say maybe 2008, somewhere in that neighborhood. I couldn't tell you for sure. My nephew got married at Disney World. And so my husband and I ride a motorcycle. And so we decided we were going to go to Florida for the wedding, but we went a week early and we rented a motorcycle and we rode from Orlando to Key West.
Nice.
And we happened to be there. Now, we didn't get to watch the racing. We got there at the end, like on the last day. And so by the time we got there, the power boats were parked along the street.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Amazing. And they're huge. They're huge. And I said they almost take up the whole city block when they park,
Oh, and they do a boat parade, and there's this is a few of the boats, but this particular one, MCon, sponsored by Monster Energy, it's beautiful, and they go up on the tilted trailers. So you've seen them on the tilted trailers because they're obviously too wide to go down a road. So they put them on the tilted trailers, and then what MCon do at night, they take off their engine hatch and they put on a clear Perspex engine hatch, and then they put a red light in it, and their engines are so clean you could eat your dinner off them. So obviously you can see the whole engine through the clear cover, and it just looks beautiful at night. There's a few teams that do that, but MCon, it's just, I love it. I just love looking at these boats. They're beautiful.
And that was the first I'd ever, that was before I was really, promoting women in motorsports and that, although it was just so breathtaking and so impressive to see those boats. They were just, if you watch them on TV, they don't look nearly as big as they do in person.
Yeah.
Wow. It was an unexpected nice surprise to be able to walk down the street and see all these different boats. It was really cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you got to experience that, because I think that people don't realize how big these race boats are until you're stood next to them. And our race boats in Europe are nowhere near as big as the boats you have in America. Well, everything's bigger in America, but the boats in America, they're just huge. And even I now, 32 years into my racing, I'm still in awe at these boats. For decades, I just look at them and they're the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So, as far as encouraging someone to check it out and see if there's any racing close by or whatever, I would 100% do that, because if I could go somewhere close to where they're racing and actually watch the races, I that's something that my husband and I have talked about, on, kind of something different than the car racing, that motorcycle that we normally follow. So that's something on our bucket list for sure, to try to get to see them race.
It's great. And, you go down to Daytona and watch it from the beach.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing, isn't it? You can lie on a beach. You can stand in the sea, eating your ice cream and watch a powerboat race, and it's free.
I know.
It's heaven. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's a whole different experience, I guess you would say, than going to a NASCAR race or an F1 race or whatever. It's just a whole different thing.
Yeah, it is just totally different in every way, and both are beautiful in their own ways. But I do like the way that powerboat racing, everything, it's free to watch, and you can just sit on the beach in America and stand in the sea, and I love it. And then you get the helicopters that fly over the boats.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. You're seeing 3 and 4 and 5 helicopters up at the same time. It's just a beautiful sight to see.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Sarah, is there anything that we haven't talked about that we should have covered, either about you or the powerboat racing or anything at all?
Well, I'm really big on marine conservation.
Okay.
And marine conservation. So I'm also a commercial diver as well as recreational diving. And for me, I do a lot of marine conservation because I want to put something back and give something to the ocean, because I've taken from the ocean all my life. And not only have I taken from the ocean by getting a huge amount of pleasure from it, but also, like all motorsport on water, we've left a dirty trail in the ocean, haven't we? We've left a dirty trail. So for me now, I do a lot of ocean conservation. And that doesn't matter whether I pick litter up from beaches or go away and do something else. And in August, I'm going away to a turtle sanctuary. So I'm going to help the turtles. I love turtles.
That is so cool.
I have a turtle on this.
I see that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I'm very big on environmental issues and the marine industry, because I think a lot of us, we play in the ocean and we forget that without the ocean, we wouldn't have this world, because the world is built around the ocean. And if our ecosystem dies in the water, our ecosystems on land also die. And I think the young people need to understand it. I mean, a lot of older people now are too stuck in their ways to change. So I think it's teaching young people about it. So I'm currently at the moment writing a set of children's books.
Oh, that's cool.
To help the young understand about marine conservation and the importance of a healthy ocean. So, we keep all the rubbish away from the oceans and get her back to being healthy again. Because if we want to play on her and we want to have fun in her and on her, then we need to give her something back.
Yeah. So where are you going for the turtle adventure?
I'm going to Greece. That's in August. And then, funny enough, there is a turtle hospital in the Florida Keys, and my husband's So my husband's taking me there in November. So I'm going to go to the turtle hospital at the Florida Keys as well in November. So this one is in Greece, and they hatch in that area of the world. They hatch around August, September. So I'm going to go when there's hatchlings. And then what you do, you actually sleep on the beach and you make sure they can all get to the water.
Yeah.
thousands of them that run down, that scuttle down and jump into the water. You just make sure that, there's no predators around, and make sure they all get into the water.
I saw, my husband's he watches like the Discovery Channel and all those channels. And we saw a show about that where people were sleeping on the beach and helping the little ones. And it just looked like the beach was just covered with baby turtles.
Yes. And I just think it'll be one of the most amazing things I'll ever do. And I'm probably going to be doing it every year, to be honest. Now. But I'm really excited about that. I almost want them to hatch early so I can go straight away, but I've got to wait till I'm going August. I think the end of August.
It'll be here before you know it.
Yeah, I know. I just can't wait. I'm just so excited. I think anything to do with marine conservation, I'm so passionate about. And I know people think it's very strange because I race powerboats and I do marine conservation, and both of them are they almost against each other. But I do believe that if you race powerboats, and as I'm now a UIM Commissioner, you can help people understand the importance. So I've learned a lot from powerboat racing. And I just think I'm in a good position on both accounts, the powerboat racing and the marine conservation.
And honestly, I don't see why the two can't be blended together, because on one side we kind of take, and the other side you're giving back. And so what a great thing for you to be doing. That's just very, very interesting. Yeah.
And I think it only takes one person to do one thing to help the marine industry, and that's all it takes. Just do one thing. And it makes a huge, huge difference.
It sure does. Well, Sarah, I have really enjoyed talking with you, and you're in Spain. So it's around 11:30 my time. What time is it in Spain right now?
It is around 5:30 my time in the afternoon. So it's it's afternoon time, and it's still nice and warm outside.
And it's still snowing in Kalamazoo, so you can send me some of that warm weather. But
I'll try.
When you live in Kalamazoo in the winter, you just know this is what's going to happen. And it isn't even the snow. I don't mind the snow so much, but it's going to be really cold, like in the teens the next few days. So I just stay home. I don't have anywhere I have to go. I can do all of these things that I'm doing from here, and so I'll just stay here where it's warm. But I really appreciate you taking time to schedule this and to be on the show with me. This has been really interesting. And, I interview a lot of women that are involved in racing, but not so many that are powerboat racers. So this is going to be a really nice podcast to share with my listeners.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, because it's great to get it out there, and I like promoting women in motorsport, and not enough women do it. And it's easier for girls to get into car racing, and that's difficult, but it's easier than powerboat racing. Powerboat racing is such a closed shop. When it comes, and it's not that girls don't want to do it; they don't know how to do it, how to get into it. But I always say with everyone, the first place to start, unless your dad does it or your brother, come down, ask questions, volunteer. We'll always use you. If you want to volunteer, come down, see us, call me. I'll get you involved.
That's the best way to get started in anything, is to volunteer and get to know the people and make connections, and then it goes from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. Well, Sarah, you have a good rest of your weekend. Again, I appreciate you being on with me. And if you'll just stay there while I end the recording, then we'll finish up after. So
perfect.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. We hope you've been inspired by the stories I shared today and feel more connected to the amazing community of women in motorsports. Remember, whether you're behind the wheel, in the pits, or cheering from the stands, your story matters. And together, we're driving change and celebrating every milestone. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who loves motorsports as much as you do. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and more incredible stories. So until next time, stay inspired, stay connected, and keep racing through life. This is the Women's Motorsports Network podcast, where every woman's story is worth celebrating.